10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. In astronomy, it may be a long voyage from the lunar to the lunatic, but they frequently cross each other's orbits when the subject of flying saucers comes up. In fact, one of the hardest things serious men in the field have to deal with is its partisans they attract to themselves. Welcome, Dr. Bill, back to the Alien Probe Podcast. How's it going?
Hey, how are you doing?
Living the dream.
In the dream.
And that's from an excerpt from Beyond Flying Saucers, which we're going to touch on a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
I know you've got a few things. Where do you want to start?
Oh, actually, what I can talk about is this guy that wrote the book, Frank Scully, when he was in 1964. He's written several autobiographical books, and they're just sort of anecdotes of his life. 1963, he was 70, and he wrote his last autobiographical book and died. And Frank Scully, it has pictures of him and stuff. The guy only had one leg, so I don't know how he lost a leg, but it was missing all the way up to the hip. And then
wow.
Yeah. And I think they said, I saw a reference that said he was a veteran, so I don't know if that was how he lost his leg.
You didn't Google what happened to Frank Scully's leg?
There's no information. I can't find anything. It was
weird.
from so Jack Parr, who nobody knows who Jack Parr is. I had to look that up. Jack Parr was I think the first host of the Tonight Show in the early 60s. And he was I remember the name, but I didn't remember who it was, so I had to look it up. And he wrote the introduction to this book, and in the introduction he said that Scully had like 40 different surgeries. So the guy, Scully has written a bunch of other books, and the titles were sort of weird, and it's like, oh, he's writing about sex. But the titles, if it's in this book, of course it's not going to be in here. They don't have it in here. Like they do now, they put all the authors' old books in it.
Yeah.
But the titles are things like My Life in Bed. Well, he's talking about his life in bed because he was in the hospital so much. And he had tuberculosis, and they had to take his lung out, and he lost a leg. So I don't know all this stuff. But he was a reporter, and he was really well known in like Hollywood. So his last autobiographical book, there's a chapter in it, and I requested it. I had to do interlibrary loan because there's only one copy of the book for sale on the internet, and the person wants $63 for it, and I don't want to spend it. So
come on, Bill.
No, hell no. So he has a chapter in there called Flying Saucers, Where Are You? And he basically sort of was revisiting this book that he wrote 14 years earlier, Behind the Flying Saucers. And in this, he's saying in 1964, when this came out, 63, 64, this book was out of print. He says you can't find it. He says you can't, it's just, it's not out there. Although this one is a 1950 copy. And he just came back, and he was just talked about some of the details and some of the aftermath of publishing this book. Two things were interesting. One was Dr. Gee. He said in this chapter, we'll talk about this chapter later too. I'll get you a copy. I just scanned it in from the book. Dr. Gee, he said it was a composite character of 8 different people that were talking about flying saucers, and it was to protect those people from, I guess, revealing secrets or something.
Retribution from the authorities.
And he said that Silas Newton, the oil guy, who's also a prominent character, and apparently is a really good friend of this guy. He said Silas Newton was it Dr. X that gave the talk at Boulder? So he says Silas Newton, or Mr. X. Silas Newton was Mr. X. So in this chapter, he definitely says Silas Newton is Mr. X. Dr. Gee, because we'll be talking about Dr. Gee when we look farther into the book, is a composite character. And another interesting thing I saw, because I looked up Silas Newton, was the FBI has like you can go in there and they released documents on UFOs and stuff, and they have all these documents on Silas Newton because the FBI investigated the hell out of him. And you can go onto the FBI website and you can look at these sites. And one of these documents is listing all these different indictments that was brought against Silas Newton. And we will come to that where we'll talk about the true articles. And he mentions the articles where they were refuting this book and saying that Silas Newton was like a con man and stuff. But all the indictments that were brought against Silas Newton, nothing happened with any of them except for one. And in that one, he pled it out. He pled out, I don't know, some sort of misdemeanor charge or something. So it's like the FBI was all over this guy for, I don't know, years, decades, but was never able to pin anything on him. It sounds familiar, though. So it sounds like a familiar story where we hear stories about people being, I guess, persecuted for a long time, and people talking about, or the media talking about, they're going to bring indictments, and the walls are closing in, and they're going to arrest them, and then nothing ever happens. So it's like interesting. I thought it was interesting. So this Silas Newton was a big sort of UFO revealer. Is that what you'd call it? What would you call that?
Yeah.
And he was persecuted, but no serious charges or criminal case was ever brought against him. So
they were just screwing with him.
Yeah,
you're trying to get him to stop. Figured they'll just keep they're badgering him.
Yeah. So I mean, the guy was under a microscope for decades.
See, today now they wouldn't. Now people are coming out, and we're going to talk about Congressman Tim Burchett, who came out and talked openly about why are we covering up.
Yeah.
The DOD's covering up everything. And there was a short that you had sent me that he was talking to, I think it was Fox News, I'm not sure. And he talks about, why, are we covering that? I don't want to say they're little green men, but he's seen things, and he said he hasn't seen things himself, but he's seen reports we haven't seen.
Yeah.
And he says these things just need to come out. But I didn't want to jump on your thing, but yeah, that kind of ties in with you can do it now.
Yeah. Well,
but back then, no.
Yeah, I don't know. We're now. There seems to be serious discussions about something going on, and it really puts things in perspective about what was happening in the past and how the government approached it. So, there was the other thing was the what else do you want to talk about? My notes.
Well, the Pentagon responds to
the Pentagon. The Pentagon is doing
responds to AOSMIG, which we don't know what that really means.
Yeah,
the UAP Public Hearings Inquiry, which was
public hearings next week. I think Tuesday.
Yeah.
I will try and check it out. My prediction is that there will be nothing. We will get nothing out of these public hearings.
There'll be nothing.
Yeah. There was public hearings.
Have we figured out why? Well, we haven't figured out why, but why don't they just give up what they've got in possession? Tell them there's stuff happening. I don't know why. Well, it's the government. I'm not wondering why. I know why, because it's the government, and we don't. They're scared of what our reaction is going to be when they open up Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and all of the UFO and all of the alien bodies and formaldehyde that they've got hidden there.
They don't.
People are gonna be like, "Oh God."
I don't know. I don't know what the. I don't know what's going on. I mean, you can't explain it. The thing there was that video that I sent you about that pilot. I don't have the details. Do I have the details? Ryan Graves on UFO tactics. That was it was a slideshow presentation for some organization, and it had to do with air safety, and he was talking about encounters with the UFOs, and these counters. One of the things I noticed from that his talk is that they got new radar systems, and he doesn't say. I think he was a newer pilot in the area or not. He doesn't say whether the old radar systems would see these anomalies, these UAPs. But it makes me wonder. It's like if the old radar systems saw UAPs, nobody was talking about it. It was being ignored. On the other hand, if the new old radar systems didn't see them, and the new radar systems did see them, it suggests that the UAPs had developed countermeasures for that particular radar system. So these are some questions I'd like to know. It's like, did the old sets see these UAPs? If they did, that's fine. Then they just ignored it for decades. If they didn't see the UAP, then the UAPs had developed countermeasures to our radar systems, which is another level of concern for whatever's going on with these objects. So
air safety seems to be the premise that their Congressman Burchett was basing his concerns on, because we're eventually going to get hit by one of these things, I guess. But to your point, they're learning. They can learn. Just it goes way back to the 1947 Los Alamos, when five UFOs crashed.
Yeah, 5 reported.
Or Aztec.
Yeah, Aztec.
We suspect that the high-powered radar system accidentally. We didn't develop these things to knock down UFOs, but because it was so high powered, they didn't want anybody to see into Los Alamos, that it accidentally shot these things down. But why can't they do it all the time? Well, they probably learned. They probably, like they're doing with our radar, they probably learned, oh shit,
they adapted.
we got to adjust. Yeah, they adapted. Now, is it an intelligence? Yeah. Is it a drone that is it AI that can develop different countermeasures based on the threat? Who knows?
My favorite is it's AI. It's very advanced AI.
Yeah.
Congressional hearings next week. UFO tactics, really good talk, and Chris Lato did an analysis of his talk, which was very good. So that's it for this week. So thank you for.
So what about So what about the go incredibly fast video?
That was fun. That was fun. I don't know how new that was. I ran across that link, and that's a great video because it showed thermal nuclear engines and how fast or how slow they would go. And then they showed, although we saw a document that was saying that thermonuclear engines could work to open up the universe. So I don't know what the conflict, and that was, I can't remember what document it is. It's in one of our shows. But they were predicting in the 50s that these thermonuclear engines could allow for 30 years to Alpha Centauri. So this video showed a different timeline, so like 1,000 years to Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, and then that's unacceptable amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to really shrink that up.
And then
if we're going to bother with it.
And then they had fusion drive, which was 100 years to Alpha Centauri. And then they had the warp drive, or gravity drive, which that paper that we talked about the other day, which just means you just go as fast as you want and you get there. They said 6 months with the gravity drive. So I think that's a conservative.
Yeah, and it shrinks space in the front and expands space in the back. I mean, but how close are we to that?
Well, if they're
it's a theory.
If the reports of what they're seeing in that paper that we talked about was measuring the speed of these UAPs and how fast they could accelerate, if if the UAPs are capable of these types of accelerations, they have to be using something equivalent to a warp drive. So we may not be, if they get some, if they release good data on these things, which they have, it will tell us a lot about their capabilities. And basically, what I said when we were talking about that paper, it just means the universe is open. The problem is time dilation. So you're just going to it's interstellar travel is useful, except decades or hundreds of years are going to pass between planet travel. The people on the ship will travel. Their time is going to be a lot slower than our time. So you may go visit 3 solar systems, but by the time you get home, 1,000 years has gone by.
It's 10 generations. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll kill something horrible. They won't make it because something horrible is going to happen
to the
people.
The people
Not
or the
to
planet.
them, maybe to them. Maybe, they're going to get hit by a meteor, or they're going to go crazy. I think more likely is that there's going to be some sort of anarchy aboard the ship in 10 generations. It's going to be like, this is just taking too long. We're turning around.
Well, I'm trying to grab a paper over here, but some of those speeds that they were estimating, it's not generational time that you're going to be traveling. It's going to be months.
Well, in the final one, yeah. But I'm talking about remember the second one was like still 1,000 years.
Yeah, that one. The second one was 100 years. It was 1,000, 100, and then very fast.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we need that technology, but we can't reverse it. We've gotten these ships allegedly, and we just can't reverse. According to Lazar, we're trying to do it, and one guy. Remember they tried to cut at Area 51 when Lazar was there. I mean, this is his story that a guy died because he tried cutting into that. There's a little dome looking ball or something.
Well, they did one of the things he also said was that I guess in the past, they had tried to take apart like the engine or the power source or something on one of these ships, and the result was the equivalent of a nuclear explosion. And then they just reported it as a nuclear test.
Yeah.
So the guy that was in the bunker with the hammer and the hacksaw had a very bad day.
Blowtorch. Blowtorch.
Yeah.
Exploded the whole area. Small nuclear blast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that didn't work. So we're still trying to figure it out, allegedly. Or we just stick them in the Air Force hangar and figuring out we can't. I know we don't give up on these things, that we know that this technology is something we would want to have, and we just keep needing to work at it. But are we just not?
Well,
we can't figure it out.
Well, this is the interest of I would say Project Galileo. It's not just the scientific aspect to it. It's the possibility of technology capture. So this technology is, if this is functional technology, it's the possibility, if you can, like the Ryan Graves, who was talking about UFO tactics, one of the objects described was a cube in a sphere, and it was 15 to 30 feet across. Now, if you can capture that, you can, I mean, it's the whole thing we're talking about. You get the UFO, you get whatever's running around, you reverse engineer. And then there's that guy that wrote that book. The day after Roswell by Corso, who was saying they were doing all sorts of reverse engineering. Although it's a little, I think the reverse engineering is a little weak. But if you look at like the, if you look at a microchip, I think it is within the technological ability. If you handed somebody a modern microchip in 1950. I think they could reverse engineer it within a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, you could extract a lot of information from that and start to build prototypes. I mean, that's a possibility. And then there was other things he talked about.
That's what we did, didn't we? I mean,
I don't know.
Microcircuit, printed circuits came from the UFOs.
That's a possibility.
You know.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Oh, let's. Do you want to talk about our favorite show, Skinwalker?
Yes,
Skinwalker.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch.
See,
Season
episode
2.
2 of the new season. The,
Season 2, Episode 2, Skinwalker Ranch.
so what'd you think, Bill?
It was better than the first episode. You didn't
Yeah.
have any embarrassed chief of staff of the former government sitting there with this incredulous look on his face going, what have we got ourselves into?
His handler was oh my God, don't talk about this.
So, although the governor was the former governor was pretty cool about it. He looked like he's having a good time. And
Yeah.
so this week though, they got the UAPX guys that we saw from the show we talked about, A Tear in the Universe or A Tear in the Sky.
Tear in the sky. Tear in the sky.
Yeah. So that you
With
had
Bill Shatner.
with William Shatner. You had Gary Vorhos and Jeremy McGowan and Jason Turner. And Jeremy McGowan and Jason Turner were on the Nimitz and the Princeton when they saw the Tic Tac.
Yeah.
And they are involved in this organization called UAPX, and one of the guys has built a car with all this tech on it, with all these like cameras and magnetometers and RF detectors or whatever. And so they were out there, which was pretty cool. And they had one of the guys, I think it was, I can't remember which guy it was. I think maybe Jason Turner had like a massive headache when they first had the meeting, and they took him out and they put him in this metal shed, which they said was a Faraday cage, which I could absolutely say was not a Faraday cage. It may have helped with his, it did help with his headache, but that was not a Faraday cage, because I had a friend who was who paid this guy to build a Faraday cage for his computer, because he was constantly getting this interference at work because of where he had to have his computer. You know, you don't have a choice where you sit. So he paid this guy to build a Faraday cage. So this guy built a metal box for the guy that was open on one side, and to put his computer in. Well, it didn't work because it was just a metal box. And a Faraday cage is actually, you know, it's
Closed.
It's closed, and it's like grounded and stuff. So it's like, no, it's not. So that shed was not a Faraday cage, but it did help the guy's headache.
I think it would have been better to take some aspirin and put some tinfoil on your head, and would have been the same thing.
I don't know. I mean, the guy obviously was in pain and something happened, but I'm not sure that it has anything to do with being at the ranch. Maybe it might have been just stress from being there or severe dehydration, although he didn't think he was dehydrated. I don't know what the altitude there is. And then next thing they did in the shows, they had like the ranch managers go out to talk with a sheriff's deputy. And they ran out to a nice little ranch house. Very, very, very spotless, clean, new ranch house. And he said that the lady that owned the house was having nice little spread, beautiful place. Said her house was being buzzed by a drone. So the sheriff came out there, but they didn't talk about the actual police report, so there's no description of the drone. Did the drone make noise? No details, because it's like, if it's just a regular drone, we all know what a drone looks like, and they make a lot of noise. You're gonna look at it and go, some asshole's flying a drone around my property. You know, call the sheriff. So no description at actually what this lady saw the drone was. And then the sheriff's deputy goes out there and he sees a light above the lamppost on the street, and he starts chasing the light. And he says he chased it until he got to the end of the road and couldn't follow it anymore. And it sort of sounds like a experience that you just had recently. And I'll add the video in here at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it was
So,
last week, and I was in the backyard, and I looked up, and there's an undulating light up in the sky, and I went, "Holy crap! What is this?" And I called Debbie out. She looked at it, and she went, "Oh, it's an airplane," because we have the airports not
hmm
Sacramento airport's in our vicinity. Flights go over all the time. So I sat and I said, "Wait right here, don't move." That is not. There were some clouds in the area, and then um, that is not moving. It's not a heli. I mean, I looked on I have that um, program where you can see all the commercial. I mean, it could have been non-commercial. I'm not able to track most military aircraft. Some I can, and it was nothing. There was nothing on in that app that I had that showed, because that's the magic app that Skinwalker has.
well,
It's
we're going
exactly
to
what
come
I
back.
have on
We're
my
going to come
tablet.
back to that in a minute. Yeah.
So, um, we looked at it and I said, okay, so the clouds started to obscure. So I went back in the house and then I came back out and it was still there, undulating. And I took a video of it, a crappy video. I know that's because I said Bill's
Yeah.
coming,
It's not bad.
but
It's not bad.
I took it with my camera. I got the newer iPhone, newest iPhone, and it took a pretty fair picture of it. But it's the thing is, I go out the next night and the same thing's there. So planet, and it was north. What we figured out, it was northwest. I said northeast, but it
It's
was.
northwest.
I actually, when I texted you, it was northwest is where it was actually
What
seen.
time? What time was that?
That was about. Let me get back about 8 or oh no, not 8. It was dark, so it was probably 9:30. About
9:30.
9:30.
Yeah, I have a astronomy program, and I went in and I was trying to. I put in your location roughly, the Sacramento area, and
Yeah,
was looking towards the northwest. I didn't see any planet come up, although
no
there's a real.
planets.
I got to go back and look, but there's a nice planetary alignment of like a bunch of planets, but you can't. It's during the day, so you can't really see it, or you have to see it like at 5 in the morning. Um,
Try
so
it
I
at
didn't see.
night to see if it's still there. I have a compass. I can actually give you the exact,
Yeah, give me.
where exact, I'll just
Yeah,
point
give.
to it and
Yeah,
see.
just text me the compass heading, and I'll look at 9:30. What date was it?
I have it on my phone when I send it. I like to
Yeah.
look at my
Don't
phone.
tell me
But
now,
yeah,
but just give me the date and then the compass heading, and I'll look on the astronomy program and see
it
if
was it was Tuesday at 10:08.
Tuesday, 10:08. I will
Tuesday
take
at
a look.
10:08.
Yeah, I didn't see any planets at that time. Did you see the moon when you were out?
No, the moon is on the opposite side of the house. That's wasn't anywhere. It
Okay,
was
all
like
right.
opposite side
You
of the
should have
house
filled
that
out
time.
the form, the UFO form,
Your form, Bill's
the
form.
UFO.
Bill has a
No,
form.
it's Project Blue Book's form. I just redid it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Send me if you got the compass heading. Send me it at some point. I'll see. I didn't see any planets when I looked the other day, real quick. In the northwest. Um, I'll look again. I didn't see anything obvious, so I don't know what it is. I'm
But it
assuming
looked kind of like what Skinwalker's looking. It looks the
we're gonna
same. Oh, look at that.
we're gonna get to that, and then the
All right.
so you didn't see it. You didn't see it as you looked. You didn't register as an aircraft, but you
Look,
also went back
no,
the next night and saw it again.
it was exactly the same spot.
Same slot.
So
So it's probably it's a planet.
planet.
I'll see if
Yes,
I
I'm
can figure
thinking
out.
it's a planet.
I'll see if I can figure out which one it is. It wasn't obvious when I looked at the program and was scrolling through the sky at different times to see what was coming up. But give me the compass heading. All right, so back to Skinwalker. Oh, then so based on your experience and the description that the deputy was having, I think he was chasing a planet, like what you
Yeah.
saw and we're going to show in the video. There was a bunch of UFO sightings in Michigan in the 60s, and J. Allen Hynek was there for some of these sightings, and he actually got in a police car when the sighting had happened, and the police ran out, the cops with the sirens blaring and the whole bit, lights and sirens, and they chased what they thought was a UFO until they basically ran out of road. Then they got out of the car, and Hynek's like looking and going, "It's Venus." Yeah, yeah.
Which is probably what this is. I don't
It
know.
might be. I couldn't pinpoint it. I'll look again. I'll sort it out. So or not. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's not unusual, but I think that's what that deputy did. And then they had what else did they
It's
do?
bizarre undulation. I mean, the way it looked was just bizarre. It was like
The light,
pulsating.
the light, the way the light was changing. You can see it in the video. It was real interesting. So I
Yeah. Bizarre.
maybe it's a space station.
But it never moves. I mean, it never moved from that. And
Well,
that's the other weird thing
well,
about it.
the
It
thing
didn't move.
is the if you go out there and a half hour later, if it's in the same spot, because the sky is going to rotate, right?
Yeah.
The stars rotate around the northern star, so it's this they're going to rotate. And if you went out there like a half hour later, and it's exactly in the same spot, then it's something else.
Yeah.
So, I mean
I know
that's
what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to look at it. The moon moves and the star moves and
It
stuff. But so if it
it
was
should have
fixed,
moved and it didn't. Yeah, it
well, but
should have changed position.
we only have a few minutes of video, and you went out the next night about the same time.
Well, I'm going out tonight, see if it's in the same spot because that was bizarre. And then I'll go out like an hour later. But I went out probably 30 minutes later and it was in the exact same spot. And
All
that
right. So it
and the
may
space station's not in geosynchronous orbit. It's a tiny little dot that you've seen it
yeah,
in the
yeah.
sky, right? It goes around. It looks like a satellite. And it just
So
it
the
yeah.
question is, yeah, if it's not moving in the sky, it's not a planet. It's not a star.
Yeah.
So the question is
Weird.
what it
What
is.
the hell was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go back out, look again.
Well,
Do
take a
do the
couple of different compass readings
yeah,
at the
take a
same
compass
time,
reading
the next time.
and
And then if it's there, and
and
if it isn't, then I'll go like an hour later, maybe do another compass reading.
yeah,
If it hasn't changed, something's weird.
yeah, it should be moving in the sky. And do the
Even if it's a
paper
planet, it'll move.
do the
Do the
paperwork.
paper. Do the report. Do your
Do the
paperwork.
paperwork, man.
Report. Do
You know
your
how
report.
I sweated over recreating that form. So we need to use it. Bureaucracy needs to be maintained. So,
Yes.
all right. So I think the sheriff, I'm not sure what the sheriff's deputy saw on Skinwalker Ranch. And then they started shooting rockets into the triangle. And the UAPX guy kept overloading his inverter on the his Osiris truck, which was really irritating me because it's like, dude, you're overloading your inverter, and you're just restarting everything, and then you're overloading the inverter again, and then you're restarting everything, and then you're reloading, and it's like, come on, unplug a few things. And then
Yeah. Now the power went out.
power
The
went out
went
every time we shoot a rocket.
What's going on?
The power goes out. I was like, come on, you guys are there. They're not just there for that night, which is what they implied. It's like, if he's having equipment trouble, just shut everything down. You're going to do it the next night, troubleshoot, get his equipment running. So it's like, this guy's got this cool truck with all this stuff on it. It kept shutting down, and then they just sort of milking it. Oh, there's a malevolent force on the ranch that's shutting down my thing. No, fix your equipment. Anytime you do an experiment, this has happened to me hundreds of times. Anytime you do an experiment for the first time, it's like things go wrong. I mean, or even any equipment, you're working with electronics and equipment, things go wrong. It's like, even it's just like,
test it. Well, test it.
You do test it. You set everything up. Things still go wrong. I mean, it takes. So it's obvious that the Osiris van is. It's still a work in progress. And then even in that movie, The Terror in the Sky, they didn't provide a lot of impressive data. So I think they got a nice setup. They're working on it, but I think it's a work in progress. So, and then they had the Ute Indian come out a day later, and they interviewed him. He lives down the road And he was talking about a UFO sighting when he was working at the treatment center on the reservation. Treatment center is a drug treatment center on the reservation because it's the
Yeah.
yeah. So and I was just thinking about that. They're doing like outreach to the Native Americans, and it's like that really nice rancho that lady had was getting buzzed by a drone. Would I mean, and you have the sheriff. So the thing to remember about this area is that you have the sheriff and you have this patchwork of tribal land, because up until 1932, the law in the state of Utah was that if the Indians were not using the reservation land, the state could take it away from them. And Skinwalker Ranch is some of the prime ranch land that used to be in the reservation. So, so if you had a little rancho on your on the res land, they wouldn't take it away from the Indians, but you know, bad things happened, and that county is notorious for the local sheriff because it's such a patchwork of tribal land and state, public land or privately owned land. It's such a patchwork. There's ongoing issues with the local sheriff going onto tribal land and arresting Native Americans for crimes committed, because, I mean, yeah, and
You can't. I don't think
they're
you
legally
can,
they
can he?
cannot, but it's an issue in that area because it's such a patchwork, and the sheriff's just going to arrest you, and then they're going to sort it out. But once they got you, they got you. So
Yeah.
there's issues in that county with the tribe and the cowboys and Indians issues.
Suffice it to say that we're no closer to finding what the
No,
mystery of Skinwalker Ranch is than
but
when we started. It's going to go on. It's created an interest. I honestly didn't think they'd have a season 2. It was so horrible.
well, and
That
another
Oak Island keeps going. So
okay, keep it milk that cow, baby. So the Corey
Yep.
Sarawak was the Indian that they brought in, Native American that they brought in to talk to him, and I just has this impression they got these people doing outreach, and this one guy, he's got the funny vest on and he's got the jewelry and the beads or whatever, and he's doing outreach with the Native Americans, and I just have a feeling that he went onto some tribal land, he found this guy, and the guy goes, and it's like and they paid him. So it's like if I hate the cowboys and I'm a Native American, and some cowboy comes up to me and says, "Have you seen anything unusual?" And it's like, well, I got some stories. What, and the super rich guy that owns the ranch down the road wants to pay me a few bucks. I got plenty of stories for you. So
Yeah.
I'll take your money. I mean, hey, pay me. I can come up with some good UFO stories too. Lay some cash on me. So I don't know if the guy was or not, but they should have disclosed whether or not he was paid to come on to Skinwalker Ranch and be filmed and talk about his experience. That should have been that is a big issue. The original police report with the sheriff's deputy talking a description about the drone should have been discussed. If that lady filed a report with the police about a drone, flying around her property, that police report will have a description of the drone. If it's just a white light that doesn't make any noise, then it's interesting. If it's a buzzing regular drone flying around, I mean, they're hiding, the people that are making the show, or they're hiding information to make it more interesting, make it more dramatic.
Yeah.
And it's called bullshit.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Next
Yeah.
week they're going to look at I guess petroglyphs and then do an interpretation of that. And they say that the triangle could possibly be a wormhole or a portal into another dimension. Oh, and then they got all excited because they saw a UAP, and then they were filming it, and you could see it. But the way the sun was at a low angle, so a high altitude aircraft would look exactly like what they were seeing. But they did not do what they've done on previous episodes, which is run into their command center and look to see if there was an aircraft. So they left that information out. So I mean, they're leaving stuff out to make it more interesting, and they're just bullshitting us. So
Flight radar. Flight radar is the app.
Flight radar. Yeah, they didn't even bother to do that. But they did that last week. They were doing it going, there's an NSF aircraft that's flying over the area that's spying on us. Well, the thing is they blacked out what the craft was, which they didn't have to do. And another thing is just call the NSF.
FAA.
Yeah, NSF, National Science Foundation. Or they're flying. They could look on their app and see which airport it's flying out. Go to the airport and talk to the crew. Say, what are you guys doing? And they'll tell you, we're spying on you. They're doing.
Why did they think it was an NSF aircraft? Was it identified as?
Yeah, it was National Science Foundation plane doing probably just doing aerial survey, just a general mapping, and they're making it all.
They were grading.
Yeah. They're making it all dramatic and stuff. It's like, come on, just do your due diligence and don't. Well, if you're gonna try and find something interesting, just don't bullshit us and call this. Don't feed me a shit sandwich and tell me it's prime beef.
Yeah. That's what they do.
That's what they do. So, yeah, it's like Blind Frog Ranch, which I think they got. I mean, Blind Frog Ranch has some interesting stories, but they're just feeding us a shit sandwich. So, and they're making it worse. They could do. Yeah.
Did you do a new episode of Blind Frog?
I don't think there are any. I suffered through the first season. I think they're doing another season. I think they could do a lot better, and they could tell compelling stories about their land and the mysteries on their land, but they don't have to pull in all the weird reaction take. Oh my God. Look, we found an ancient coin that just happened to be here. Whoa, but it's not real. Oh, come on. Nobody's falling for that. Anyway, Skinwalker, season 2, episode 2.
We just watched it, and Robert watched it with us and goes, "I don't know how you guys watch this bullshit."
It's so painful. Actually, this episode was better. They did a good job, and the guy that's owns the ranch, Brandon Fugel. His screen presence has improved dramatically, and he's excellent now. He's excellent on the screen. And the first season he was a little stiff, but now he's really relaxed and he's grown into the role. So,
well, he doesn't spend a lot of time on the show, which helps.
No, but he's worked on his screen presence. He's gotten some coaching.
He's got coaching.
He's got coaching, but yeah, he's looking great. He's doing a great job for his production. So it's a good job. But otherwise, I'm gonna watch it next week.
We're really watching it we're not watching it because we find it interesting. We're watching it to dirt it.
I wish it was interesting, but I even think Bigelow, when he bought that ranch, I think there was a lot of BS involved in it, and a lot of the activities was cowboys and Indians, basically.
Bigelow is a huge UFO guy. I mean, he loves the UFOs.
I think
I think he thought something was there.
Yeah.
I
think he's genuine. I think he's very genuine in how he's approached this stuff. I think he has been hoodwinked by various individuals, but I think he is sincere in his belief and his willingness to commit money into the investigation. So I think I love Bigelow. I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think he's been hoodwinked and stuff.
He sold it. If there was anything there, he would have kept it. And he's a freaking billionaire or millionaire or whatever. He would have pumped money into there and done something probably even better than this. But I think he milked it as far as the research portion of it, and he dumped it off on somebody that's going to make it into a series.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's a great way to it's a good property to pick up, and this show is a good idea to go with it. But it's hard to say. They may have seen some stuff out there, some good stuff out there, or what. But it's when you sort of smother it in this crap, it really diminishes if you've seen anything sort of genuine. So if you see, I mean, if you create a bunch of theatrics, and they're not really lying, but they're lying through admission on how they present the stuff. Like they're not saying, presenting the full police report. They're not saying whether or not they paid the Native American guy to come in and talk, which would definitely lead to bias. And given the relationship between the tribes in the area and the cowboys, sure, I would fully believe that guy. Pay me some cash, I'll tell you a story. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're not. But that diminishes anything genuine that they may see because they cover it with so much theatrics. It's like Blind Frog Ranch, same thing. They got fascinating sites, they got interesting history and stories, and they're throwing in a bunch of crap theatrics. So, hey, I mean, it's it's just to get people to watch the stuff. But I like it. They just kept shooting rockets too. It's like, why are you keep shooting rockets if the observer truck isn't working? Just take a breath, take a day, and get everything working.
You've shot rockets. They're kind of fun.
Yeah, they are. I mean, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, let's do it.
Let's just shoot some rockets.
Let's shoot some rockets. Who cares if the truck's not working?
Yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about Scully. What do you
Yeah.
got?
So the lunar fringe. I mean, I tried to get
Lunar
I'm like, oh,
Fringe.
what about? Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I did like about the lunar fringe was they talked about my favorite theory is the hollow Earth theory.
Oh yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
was that
Yeah.
chapter, and they
Mention.
said that eons ago the Earth. I mean, one of the things is that how many different civilizations have been on the Earth since it's been around. I mean, they surmise. I mean, I keep hearing numbers like 5 and 6 different total civilizations, maybe more. But these things occupied. I don't know where they came from. I mean, they throw around with the Etherian. What do they call that thing? They have
Etherians.
a name. Yeah, the
Etherians.
Etherians. But they
Etherians.
blow up. At some point, we blew out the terminal ends of the Earth, and the magnetically directed saucers, or you can go inside the Earth.
Yeah.
And now that's kind of what we're seeing now as these things. But there was people. Now they said that eon. There's another. One of the civilizations were tall people, like 7 feet tall, and
Oh
then
yeah, yeah.
these
Yeah.
guys were.
That was
These guys were.
Paxton C. Hayes had found some giants, and that's actually sort of a fringe science thing about these giants. And supposedly the Smithsonian has a bunch of skeletons, like giant skeletons. One of the issues with a lot of these remains from Native Americans is a lot of stuff has been returned to tribes, even to tribes that had no affiliation with whatever the remains are. That happens. So it used to be okay to do anthropological studies on these remains, and now I think they're required to return the remains for burial. So even if they used to say that the Smithsonian had giant remains, they may have been returned to the tribes, and so you don't know. I had I couldn't find it, but I thought it was in Wyatt Earp's biography. But I was reading one of these old Western guys, and he was traveling from some point to point A to point B when he was a youngster, and for work in Texas someplace, and he was crossing a river, and he found a giant skull, and he just threw that out in his his biography. And it's not like he just said, yeah, I just found this skull. It was huge at this one location when I was crossing a river at some point, and I couldn't find the original book. I thought it was Wyatt Earp, but it wasn't. I think it's something else. It might have been an old Daniel Boone or something. So there was definitely some giants have been found, and the rumor is that there was a whole tribe of like 7-foot Indians and Native Americans in the Americas before the colonizers and genociders showed up.
The show we did on the in Nevada, where they have the naval submarine base. It's in the middle of the desert, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which on I think that lake. I mean, there was a story that evolved from that eons ago when the sea was in California, when it because the sea was inland. We talked
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
last week, the week before. That these giants were underground, and it kind of tied into the military base. Possibly, we don't. I
Yeah.
mean, this is
Yeah.
far-fetched, I think, but making submarines go from this lake in the middle of the desert in Nevada all the way to Malibu or down by the Catalina, where it comes out by Catalina Island. And then there's actually, they can actually travel through there in tunnels, but they said that these things were under these giants would actually occupy the underground in California. So it was an interesting story and kind of a good tie-in. But they'd found bones, like you said, they found bones and
Yeah, I mean,
things.
people have found giants, basically. They find
Yeah.
giant bones, and that Paxton, this guy has Paxton C. Hayes had found some at some point, but it's hard to find some of this older information. Did you look at the hoaxers and saucer chapter in Scully?
Yeah, I did.
Did you see that they mentioned the what is it called? The name
Maury Island.
Maury
Oh.
Island, but they talked about the pancake that always gets shown.
Yeah,
the
the flying pancake.
Yeah, the flying pancake.
The flapjack. Well,
The
they called it
flapjack.
pancake, but it actually was they called it pancake, but it was actually, its nickname was the flying flapjack.
Okay, yeah, the
'Cause
XF5U alias V172.
as though they found this thing washed up on the shore
That is-
somewhere. It fell off a boat.
In Texas, that's the weirdest story because it's like there's no details on it. It's like why, how does this happen? I mean, we know it's that's a true event, but it's like, how did this thing end up washing up on the shore? And then
Yeah, it had propellers and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't really. It wasn't really what you would call a flying saucer, that had some sort of propulsion that didn't involve, conventional,
it was fans
types of,
It had like fans,
fans or whatever it
fans
was.
integrated into it to give it lift and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, it's not an impressive thing. And then they talked about Maury Island. Again.
Yeah, and that keeps popping up with this, the plane crash. Now I heard there was one story where it was shot down by a 20 millimeter gun. I mean, I don't know if that was the case. Whatever happened to the guys that parachuted out? Does anybody ever talk to
they
those
were okay.
guys?
They were fine. One guy broke his leg, I think. I don't know about aftermath, but they both survived.
Did they ever tell their story?
They did, but basically,
I mean, what happened?
Basically, the one guy was hitchhiking. They got him out, and then the third guy. There's 4 people on the plane. There's the 2 pilots that did the investigation. There was the engineer, and then there's a hitchhiker. They put the hitchhiker out, and then one of the pilots, I can't remember which one, literally threw the engineer out of the plane. And one of those, I don't remember. I think the hitchhiker broke his leg. And that's pretty much it. And the plane was in trouble, and I think it's perfectly reasonable that now you could speculate that it was sabotage because an exhaust manifold was missing, or an exhaust shield or something on one of the engines, which caused the exhaust to heat up and make the wing catch on fire. And I think that's where the catastrophic failure occurred, is because the wing was on fire, and it's just the fuel tanks are in the wing, and then the wing tore off or something. And so the thing that doesn't make sense is that this plane was just rehabbed or just redone down at their base, which was down in California. Was it Edwards?
Hamilton. It was
Hamilton.
That was Hamilton, right in the bay.
Okay, so
we went to an air show there. Remember?
Yeah. They had they were at Hamilton, so the plane had been just been I don't know,
Refurbished. Yeah, it was
refurbished, rebuilt.
whatever. Yeah.
And they flew it up to Washington, and there was no problem. So either the plane had some maintenance done when it got up to Washington, and the mechanic left the shield off, or it just wore down enough stuff from the previous flight, so the next flight, because it was immediate flight, they were in the air for 10 minutes when the plane failed. But anyway, yeah, both guys lived. One of the guys said that one of the pilots saved his life because he literally threw him out the door, which probably is a good indication of how bad the shape the plane was at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't know what's going on. But the interesting thing in this hoaxers and saucers chapter, and I saw this before, and I just recently, this is the second place, and they talk about Fred Chrisman, who was the guy that was involved somehow weirdly involved in the Kennedy assassination. This is the only other place that I've seen where he says that he was an Air Force reservist. And it was interesting because Kenneth Arnold was trying to talk with Chrisman, and Chrisman was put on a plane and sent to Alaska. What's he say? It's got that in here. Dahl reported signing 6 discs. Kenneth Arnold checked for errors. Where is it? Oh, Chrisman says, I was at the time active in reservist affairs in the Air Force, Chrisman reported. Why did not the Air Force call me to account for my dastardly actions if he was making this crap up? This is what Chrisman is saying after all this stuff happened. You know as well as I do that they would not take such shenanigans from a junior officer of the reserve without some form of punishment. Yeah, there's something weird about that. And this is actually very cool because they talk about Roy A. Palmer, who is the editor of Fate magazine and Amazing Stories. Fate magazine's where this Kenneth Arnold stuff was written up. And a lot of stuff that I've read never mentions who this editor was. They'll say the editor of some magazine, but they never mention his name. They mention his name. You never hear that Chrisman was in the Air Force, and that's sort of like tough information to find. That's in here. So anyway, that's that for that. We'll move on this, but we're coming up on an hour, and I guess we're not going to hit we're not going to talk about Omni. What I'm going to do is I will scan in these articles for you and get them to you.
Okay.
Because there's an interview with, and what we'll do is we'll talk about, this is from Omni 1984. Now the later issues, as I mentioned before, there's PDFs. You can get them from archive.org, so I'll get those to you. This one that's missing from the archive.org, which is, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But this is some interviews of this article I want to talk about is Inside the Military UFO Underground. And they interview Robert Odine, retired Army Command Sergeant Major. They interview Bob Lazar, who calls the program he worked on Project Galileo. That's interesting. Coincidence?
That's
conspiracy?
Weird. Yep.
And then they interview another guy who I don't see any name. Baffled at Bentwaters, Colonel Charles I. Halt, U.S. Air Force, retired. So we can talk about these some of these stuff, but I got to get that to you. So
all right, sounds good.
We've managed to waste another hour
without covering everything we wanted.
Yes,
but that's fine.
And complained about Skinwalker.
Well, that's our job.
It's our job. Okay.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Also, check out our website, alienprobe.net. That has all of our episodes on it. We're on all podcast platforms. See us on Twitter, Alien Probe Pod, and Instagram at Alien Probe Pod. Check out YouTube, like, and subscribe. Thanks to our senior producer, Robert Anthony, who's still traveling the country. I think he's headed toward Austin in his trailer with his 2 dogs. Thanks for Dr. Bill once again.
Okay.
Awesome episode.
All right. We'll see you. Bye.